Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gold Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Yes, it's still me opening the show, which means Rob Guest is gallivanting across Europe somewhere right now, probably just singing some kind of Richarlison chant as he goes. That means that football.london boss and Spurs fan Lee Wilmot joins me once again. How you doing, Lee?
I'm back. I'm very well, thank you. There's a rather big game on the horizon at the weekend, and I'm delighted to join you again.
The excitement of your "oh, I'm back" just kind of threw me there completely. I don't think Guest he's ever been that excited to be on the pod. He
I
just
don't get,
tolerates me.
I don't get to do this very often. I don't get out much. This is a highlight of my week.
Well, yes, no comment on that. But yeah, we've got loads to talk. It's one of these where kind of Guesty and I have spoken about in the past that we'd only do a second pod each week if there was a real need for it. Being Tottenham Hotspur, there is often a need for it, and this is one of these perfect weeks to kind of exemplify that, because since we last spoke, we've had the fans forum, which was really interesting, threw up a few different things. We've had another Daniel Levy interview today with Bloomberg, which has got some interesting stuff in it as well. I went along and watched the under-21s. I saw the debut of a certain Alejo Veliz. Apparently, that's how you pronounce it, which is going to cause me nightmares over the seasons to come. And we also had, unfortunately, an awful injury for Ivan Perisic. I think probably, actually, let's start with Perisic, as he's the last one kind of on that little list, and he's probably quite, I was going to say quick to deal with, which sounds awful for a guy that's out for at least 6 months with a ACL injury. So what we understand about this, it was just took place it happened in non-contact training at Hotspur Way. Differing timeline slightly, as it always is in these cases. Club have pretty much ruled him out for the season. They said so in their statement. The noises coming out from Perisic's camp appear to be maybe 6 months, maybe back for the last couple of months of the season if he's going to really target that, presumably because he's got the Euros in mind. How big of a loss is even Perisic to Tottenham this season?
If you'd asked me that in the summer, I wouldn't have said a very big loss, because I think everyone was kind of expecting him to be one of the ones on the list to leave. He's an Antonio Conte signing. He's an Antonio Conte favourite. He's not young anymore. It didn't really seem like he would fit into Ange Postecoglou's philosophy, essentially, even though he is quite capable of chasing down and pressing high, winning the ball back and getting forward and getting backwards as well. He's got a hell of a lot of injury. He's got a hell of a lot of energy. That's a Freudian
A hell
slip
of a
there,
lot of
isn't it?
injury
Considering
now,
he is injured
unfortunately.
now. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I wouldn't have been massively bothered if he'd gone in the summer, but I think he's already shown, and I wrote a piece about him when I went to the game at Bournemouth, of how important he is becoming off the bench. I think he probably knows, given his age, he's not necessarily going to fit into the first 11 picture. But yeah, he's shown real glimpses of quality, and the kind of quality that the Spurs fans expected when Conte signed him a year ago, that we wanted to see last year. And perhaps that kind of freedom, that more attacking approach from Postecoglou has kind of opened him up a little bit. And yeah, he's been excellent when he's come off the bench. If not, probably not got the assists that you would think, but he's got those pre-assists, those kind of second assists where he's kind of played the ball before the assist comes in, and he's got really involved in quite a few goals already this season. And yeah, it's a real shame that if it is as Spurs expect, it's probably the end of his Spurs career, given his contract runs out in the summer, and given his age, may not have that renewed.
Yeah, what I would say, and this is kind of the hopeful side of me, is that he's had so few injuries over his career, and this has been one of the kind of big things about his longevity, I think, is that if you look back over his career trying to find any serious injuries, you'll struggle big time. And this is kind of, I think, the first real serious injury he's had, unless I've missed one early on. And hopefully that means that his body is quite a good one at either deflecting injuries or hopefully healing quite quickly as well. So fingers crossed for him, he does come back quite quickly. And exactly kind of going with what you said there, I put out about the news yesterday, and someone, I don't even think they were a Spurs fan, replied saying, "Oh, bench player. How's he an important player? And it's like, well, you've kind of missed the point. He's been crucial coming off the bench this season. And, you say about not having an amount of assists. It's true. And it's silly things like he was the one that played it into Ben Davies. And because that was ruled a back pass, an own goal, it doesn't count as an assist for him against Man U, the second goal. It's just silly little things like that. So he's brought experience and quality. His delivery of corners is superb as well. And he's going to be a big miss for Spurs. The only thing I would say is that in that position, they've got so many bodies. That's probably the one spot in the team where they actually are massively overstocked, because you've got, Son, Solomon, Richarlison can play there. Brennan Johnson can play there. Brian Hill I think he's on his way back. He certainly hasn't been in group training previously this week. So when he returns, we'll see. You've got technically Ryan Sessegnon, when he comes back, could play there. Kulusevski is left-footed. He could play on that side. It is the one area of the pitch where you do have a lot of people. Even Lo Celso could play there if you wanted him to on the left of a three. I've seen him do that before. So yes, there's bodies there, but what I would say is just the quality that he brings. It's very few people in that squad have got that quality with their delivery to replicate that. You have to it's as Postecoglou says, you have to go in a different direction sometimes if you're going to have a different player in there. It's not necessarily can be worse or better, but it's going to be very different. It's a real shame that he's kind of almost not turned around his career, but I think going back to being a winger has revitalized him, and he's clearly has bought into the whole Postecoglou way, and Postecoglou likes him as well. We'll hear from Postecoglou on him tomorrow. But yeah, massive shame. Even Perisic being out for potentially the season, but if not, hopefully maybe back in for the run-in as Spurs are going for the title, or whatever they're going for at that point. I got a bit carried away there. So a lot of Daniel Levy stuff to kind of get through as well. Although some people might say we did that on the last podcast with your your spectacular. You called it a rant. I didn't think it was a rant. I thought it was a measured take on the chairman of Tottenham Hotspur. So if you've kind of missed out on it all, no, not at all, not at all. That's kind of that's what the podcast is all about, really, isn't it? It's hearing different opinions. It's hearing all sides of it, and then kind of letting people give us their thoughts back as well. And even the comments under the last YouTube video, I could see there was loads of differing kind of versions on what people think about Daniel Levy. But I think one of the most important things that we've seen is that if he communicates and if he lets people know why he's making certain decisions, there's actually at least an understanding of why he's making these decisions. It may not be that people still don't agree with him, and that's, certainly some of the decisions he's made I don't agree with at all. And there's some that I do understand where they've come from. But if he's actually going to come out and speak about it, then it humanizes him. We get to understand exactly where these kind of the thinking, the logic came from. And, we've had a month now, where we've had him at a fans advisory board meeting. We've had the fans forum on Tuesday night. And now we've got a Bloomberg interview. We're almost at the point where we're kind of, I hasten to use the expression levied out, because that kind of sounds a little bit like I'm saying something else. But we are. We've heard so much from him in the week that there's loads to dive into. I mean, first off, I think the one we have to tackle, which he said in both the fans forum and in his Bloomberg interview that came out today, buyback clause for Harry Kane. I think, from what I kind of understand, and certainly was what I presumed as soon as he said it, I think it's roughly along the lines of the Gareth Bale idea that there's a first option. If Harry Kane were to leave Germany, then Spurs would have the first kind of look at him, as it were. And I mean, the expression, the way that Daniel Levy has said it is without giving too much info. He hasn't really kind of. The first one was, is there a buyback clause for Harry Kane? Of course, he said with a smile. That was at the fans forum. And then today in the Bloomberg interview, he kind of just said essentially they have the facility to buy him or bring him back. It was something like that, the quote. It doesn't go into too much detail. I think that's what it is, a first option. Obviously, there's a certain Harry Kane that has to agree to that anyway. It's not like you could drag him all the way back to Spurs. No, you're not going to win all those trophies in the Bundesliga. You're going to come back to Spurs and you're going to come and play opposite Chicken. But it's we'll see what the future actually holds in that. But to be honest, it's something that surely was always going to be in there anyway, wasn't it?
It seemed like that, and I would have been shocked if there wasn't a kind of a buyback clause or something written into the deal. Because for as much as Harry's kind of swayed away from talking about the personal records and that this week in the interviews that he's done leading up to the Champions League, of course they're on his mind. Of course they are. You can't go through the number of years and the number of goals you've scored in the Premier League not to have that on your mind. That is clearly going to be something that he wants to do. He's 47 away from Shearer's record, is it, at the minute, I think?
Something like that, yeah.
So as long as he's injury free, that's 2 seasons to Harry Kane, isn't it? He only needs 2 seasons at the end of his career, you would think, to come back and do that. And you'd like to think, given his history, he would like to do that at Spurs. Who knows? Of course, as you say, he's got to make the decision at the end of the day, and he'll have to make a decision in terms of his family as well. He's made a massive decision for his family to go out to a different country when he's got young children and just had a baby as well. So yeah, I think it was expected, but just hearing it from the chairman, obviously from someone that doesn't speak very often, although he has spoken a lot in the last month, as you say, to hear that and get that confirmation made it big news, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a bit of a Teddy Sheringham vibe to it. Going away to maybe win it all somewhere and then coming back and trying to do the same with Spurs. Although I'd hope that in the meantime, Spurs do very well under Postecoglou. And yeah, I've seen, I kind of said this would happen, I think, in the pod a couple of weeks back, that fans is going to overanalyze everything Harry Kane says now. It's the media are going to do it as well. We're all going to do it. And I think there's been this mad roller coaster of, I even saw people saying he spoke about their fans the other day when talking about Spurs. How dare he? And then, like, wasn't it yesterday, Thierry Henry asked him who's going to win the North London derby. He said Tottenham, of course. And it's like, this roller coaster ride that Spurs fans want to. He loves us, he hates us, he loves us, he hates us. Just let him go off and do his thing. Wish him well, and he'll be back at Spurs. I still think his story at Spurs has not ended. Whether that ends up being as a player, whether it ends up being, who knows, player manager one day, or whether it's even just as an ambassador, he'll come back at some point, I think, to Spurs, and just kind of appreciate what he's done for the club. But it's a very different era now. I would have loved to see Harry Kane in this Postecoglou team, but yeah, just kind of let him crack on and do what he's doing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you mentioned, I was going to just bring it up there. The anytime he's mentioned Spurs, I think everyone's kind of cottoned onto it, haven't they? Every time he's mentioned Spurs, it's like I'll always look at them, I'll always look at their results, and as you say, there's that one little moment with Thierry Henry yesterday when he was asked about the goal, and he said, "We're playing well," and it's obviously it's still in there. You don't lose that kind of that Spurs love, do you?
No, he's been there since he was a kid. It's like, of course it's going to be in him. But then fans, maybe some of them don't understand that when you go to a new club, you've got to kind of treat that new club as the we, the us, and all of that. It's just the way it has to be, because otherwise you get Bayern fans going, oh, why is he? It's probably after that they're saying, why is he calling Spurs we still? Oh, I can't believe it. Kane out and all this sort of stuff. It's like, you've just got to crack on with your career, essentially. Talking about the past at Tottenham, probably the most interesting bit for me of the fans forum was when he spoke about Conte and Mourinho, because it's the closest that Daniel Levy, I think, has come to just going, hands up, I made a mess. I made a bit of a mess of it all. But he didn't quite go that far. He kind of almost said, the fans told me to do it, and so did the players. It kind of felt like he was almost saying Harry Kane told him to do it. I'm just trying to see if I've got the let's have a look. There we go. I've got the quotes here, just in case anyone hadn't seen it. So the question was had he learned anything from the appointments of Conte and Mourinho? And I must admit, I love the fact that, well, I love it, it's harsh, but there was just, Nuno didn't exist in this universe. It was like one of those Marvel movies where he'd been plucked out of the timeline and suddenly he just did not exist whatsoever. And
that born winner, Nuno.
Yeah, exactly. And so he was asked about, like, what did he learn from the appointments of Conte and Mourinho, and he kind of went, and everyone laughed. It was like an unexpectedly comic moment that he probably hadn't meant to be. And then when he kind of thought about it, He said, maybe you'll be surprised by my answer, but I want to win as much as everybody else. But the frustration of not winning and the pressure from maybe some players and from a large element of the fan base that we need to win, we need to spend money, we need to have a big manager, we need to have a big name, it affected me. I'd gone through a period where we'd almost won. With Mauricio, we went through some very good times. We didn't quite get there, but we came very close, and we had a change in strategy. The strategy was, let's bring in a trophy manager. We did it twice, and look, you have to learn from your mistakes. They're great managers, but maybe not for this club. For what we want to play in a certain way, and if that means it has to take a little bit longer to win, maybe it's the right thing for us. That's why bringing Ange in was, from my point of view, the right decision. The only thing I would say as well that did strike me listening back and watching the fans forum was we kept talking about big managers in the past, and it was kind of big name managers. I kind of felt at times it would have been quite nice if he just said, but obviously Ange is a big manager and he's won everywhere he's gone in his career and done very well for himself. There was one point where Postecoglou had to jokingly say, Postecoglou is quite a big name, mate. And it's like, okay, all right. Yeah, I think he's kind of realised that Levy keeps talking about these big managers in the past. But I thought that was for me, that was the most interesting quote of the night because, yeah, he admitted I messed up. B, he was blaming the fans. And you know what? I don't think that's fair entirely. I think it's his decision. He has to own it. But I would say, of course, we, as well as media and the fans, were all putting pressure on Spurs to win trophies. It's something that we've constantly gone on about. And obviously, there was a real groundswell of the fans, especially Conte, really wanted Conte. Mourinho, I don't know. I'm trying to think back at the time. I think when he actually joined, I think there was an excitement of, yeah, he'll come and win trophies for us. I think there was definitely that. But I'd say with Conte, there was a real push from the fans, like you have to appoint him kind of thing. People who remember me talking about it way in the past, I went along with it because I think you had to look at their CV and you had to know that the likelihood is, yes, they were going to bring some kind of success, albeit in a very different environment and conditions. But I think, hopefully, if people look back at the time, I think I probably did say that there were little points that I didn't see fitting and gelling with Spurs quite as well as it would have done at their previous clubs. And the players bit was interesting as well. You've got to imagine it's Harry Kane. You'd think Harry Kane had a very, and others as well, I'm sure, like the senior leaders in the club, but Harry Kane had a good relationship with Mourinho and Conte as well. What did you think of those quotes?
Shock horror. I'm gonna stand by Daniel Lee. But I think that's all you can ask for, isn't it? From someone who, if someone's done something wrong or someone's made a mistake, all you can ask for at the end of it is that they own up to it. And it's like talking to your kids, isn't it? You've done something wrong, just own it, and say yes, you've done something wrong, say sorry, and then it's done. Essentially, that I think. After the event, that's all you can ask for him to do, and he's come out and said, "Yes, we've made mistakes." So you have to accept that, and you have to say, "Thanks, well done for saying it." Essentially, he doesn't have to say that, but he's come out and said it. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. In terms of making those decisions, I didn't agree with them when they were brought in. I didn't think Mourinho was the right man after Pochettino. Conte was a little bit different, and I'm just going to ignore Nuno as well. Conte was a little bit different in terms of when he was appointed. I did sit there and think, well, it might be good for a year and a half before it blows up, because that's what tends to happen with Antonio Conte. He's that kind of character. He's a fiery individual.
So it was.
And so it was, yeah. But it wasn't that good. It was okay. It was reasonable in the first year and a half.
Season.
Yeah. It didn't lead to the trophies that everyone wanted from the big name manager. So yeah, one decision I didn't agree with. One I thought was maybe half right, and neither of them worked. And Nuno, and yeah, for Levy to come out and say yes, I've made mistakes. I get it. We all want to win trophies, and he's went out and signed 2 managers who have won everything in their careers. You couldn't really argue with the decisions if that's what Tottenham wanted. The only argument you can raise is that they don't play the football that Tottenham fans want to see. And at the end of the day, when they don't win trophies and we don't play the football that we want to see, it's a disaster. And it's turned out to be a disaster twice, essentially, with Mourinho and Conte and Nuno.
That's that's the one thing about the fans forum environment, obviously, is that there's not the ability to follow up questions unless someone later on chooses to do it. And I think, yeah, had that been a press conference, I think I would have definitely followed up about Nuno. I would have asked, like, so where did Nuno fit in all of that? Where was it your strategy? How did Nuno fit in it? And also, I think the question probably has to ask, yes, I get it. You decided I'm going to do this win now strategy, but was your backing of those managers transfer wise, was that win now strategy as well? Or did you try to fit them into the previous strategy, which maybe didn't fit them or anyone? That would have been interesting to know. But yeah, exactly. It's like I said at the top of it all, really. If you're going to explain it, I still don't think he really owned it entirely, but he did call them mistakes. He did it's like going to your mum and saying, my brother told me to do it. It wasn't me. But yeah, it's a start. It's definitely something. And actually, quite interesting. The one thing he really wasn't apologising or even close to kind of saying was a mistake was the Super League stuff. He was quite strong on that and saying he had no regrets at all on that. And just to paraphrase massively, was pretty much saying the big clubs were going to go and sit at this table, Spurs were going to get left behind. He had to take that opportunity to at least listen to what was being said at that table. And he admitted there were it was doomed, really. There was lots of failings in it. And he also made it quite clear that it was never the intention to leave the Premier League. It was to do it alongside the Premier League. The Super League stuff, I think if people go back, I think there's a lot of stuff they could probably pick apart into what he said. In terms of the Super League itself, in terms of the fact that they kind of signed up rather than had just listened to what they'd said. And also the fact that, they'd really, let's be honest, came out of it because of the outcry. They didn't come out of it because they went, oh yeah, this might not work. They came out of it because everyone went, no, it's rubbish.
Yep.
So yeah, I do think that's a slight revision of history, just a tad.
That's one thing I won't be a Levy apologist for.
Okay. It's not calling yourself a Levy apologist.
No, the Super League wasn't the disaster from start to finish, and I get the thinking of we couldn't be left behind. I get that, but just no. I don't really want to go back into it. Just no. There's no reason for it. It was a silly decision, and yeah, we shouldn't be. I don't understand why he's brought that back up again and saying that wasn't a mistake, but there we go.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, to be fair, he was asked about it, but yes, I think he could have, because at the time they apologised. That's the other thing. At the statement, when they put out, they apologised, I think, if I remember correctly. It was either them or Liverpool or both. One of the, maybe both. The other contentious issue, of course, matchday ticket pricing. That was brought up a couple of times. I did feel he swerved that a fair bit. He was essentially like ducking and weaving and talking about they're going to do a review of everything and all of that. And talking about operating costs and all that. And I get all of that, but someone tried to ask him a really direct question, which was a good question. It was an excellent one. They asked him, like, how much do you think is too much to pay to watch Tottenham Hotspur? And tell me the exact figure. Don't just say it depends. It was a really good question. And he absolutely kind of sidestepped it and just went, as I said, we're doing a review and all that. But the thing is, the review, it doesn't help anyone, certainly this season, unless it comes in towards the end of the season. It's, yeah. And I mean, he also spoke about the COVID losses, the financial losses that during the pandemic, they lost £200 million. And, they've had to kind of get help from the Bank of England. And then they've eaten that up, that massive loss in terms of it's gone into long-term finance, things like that. And it's kind of been drawn out. But I kind of felt like he was explaining how difficult it was, which is true, but then was also explaining how all of that loss has now been spread out over so many years that it's not impacting the club. And it's like, well, are you using that to justify the ticket rises, or are you not? Or are you saying to feel sorry for the club? Which I do think a lot of football clubs were in big, big danger. And that was one of the good things, certainly, about Daniel Levy's management of the club, is that during the pandemic, Spurs were probably one of the best set up to be able to handle the nightmares of kind of losing all income pretty much coming into a club. But yeah, I wasn't entirely sure what he was trying to justify the price rise with. I think if he just stuck with the operating cost, maybe he would have been fine. But there was, this kind of underwriting element of the pandemic losses as well that was in there. I mean, can you see them turning that around this season, changing the match day prices?
I can't. No, it's just one of those things that I just, as with the cost of football shirts, just seems to go up and up and up, and
It's incredible.
Yeah, and
some people can just buy loads of them and put them across their wall, of course.
Yeah, yep. As
that's a good one for the listeners on the podcast. If you're not aware, I think I said it last one. Lee has like kind of all retro and various shirts hanging up behind him on the wall.
Yeah, I don't really get it when you look at the kind of. It's always used as a model. The Bundesliga is always used as a model for kind of the ticket prices over there, and kind of argument against that is that they don't have the best players over there. Well, Bayern just went and spent £100 million on Harry Kane. They spent how much on Leroy Sané, who scored against Man United, obviously from Manchester City. They've got the funding.
Are they the exception to the rule because of their funding as the big club and their global appeal?
Maybe, but the other Bundesliga clubs don't charge very much for their prices. And yeah, I suppose you can argue they don't have the better players, but teams like Dortmund have a recruitment process a bit like Brighton. They go out and they spend time recruiting the best young players and bringing them in and then selling them on essentially. And Dortmund seem to do all right. But yeah, I don't live in London. I live just out. I'm not far away from London, obviously, where I am. I've got 2 kids, and I don't get to games nearly as much as I would like, purely because of if I go to a game, I want to take my kids with me. I don't want to spend my Saturday afternoon or my Sunday afternoon on my own. I've brought my 2 kids up to be Tottenham fans. I want to take me. So you're then factoring in 3 ticket prices. The number of kind of junior prices, really family areas of the stadium is limited. So you do find yourself having to buy expensive kids prices. I have to get the train to London to do it. And then with kids, it's like, can I have this to eat? Can I have this to drink? Can I buy this shirt or can I have that? Now, obviously, I could flex my football.london muscle and kick Guesty out of the press box, but I don't do that.
Get your children into the press box.
yeah, exactly. I can't do that. No, but that, as I say, that would just be me. So it is a frustration. I'm kind of speaking to the converted on everyone listening to this podcast or on YouTube here. Everyone knows how much it costs, and I think everyone will tell you it is ridiculous. It just seems to be the nature of football in this country and the kind of the grand appeal of the sport. And clubs know that it's £1 billion industry, and they can essentially charge what they want. People will still go because of the kind of the tribalism and the joy that it brings. It's our national sport. People want to go every week. And I don't going off on a complete tangent, but I don't get the idea of the kind of you can't show football on TV at 3 o'clock on a Saturday because people wouldn't go to the games. Yes, they would. It's part of our culture to go to the games.
Is that to stop them going to more local football though, and football down the ladder? Maybe. Because I don't know. It's a difficult one because not all the Premier League clubs sell out either. As well, Spurs obviously are one that do most games, but the 3. At the moment they're protecting the 3 p.m. thing, but I do wonder in the future whether that ends up getting changed purely because of the fact that they're trying to now lob more fixtures into like Friday nights and Monday nights, which is actually more of a pain in the backside for fans. I think traveling up and down the country at night than anything at all. Just back on the pricing thing, it's quite interesting because every time this comes up, I get American sport people that live in America going, "You what?" kind of thing. Obviously, they don't say that because it's not a very American expression, but they're saying like, "Have you seen the ticket prices in the NFL, the NBA, the MLB?" And it's just like, it's huge prices. You're talking about taking families to that is just like, the costs are way, way, way like skyrocket above what it costs you to go to a Premier League game. So they're kind of like, when they come over and manage to get a ticket, for them, it's actually not too bad. So yeah, it's one of those where maybe that's where the people at the top of the Premier League clubs could say, well, we're actually nowhere near what it costs you in American sports to go and see. And maybe that's part of their justification for it. But I hope it does change. It's like you say, there's so many families that I know are being priced out, and I was talking to an Arsenal supporting friend. Yes, I do have some friends that support Arsenal, and they were actually saying that at the Emirates they've switched to a ballot system now, and so a lot of the fans that were previously able to get in quite regularly and watch games are now finding that they're not getting to watch matches because there's every so often it's a completely different person is sitting roughly where they wanted to sit and things like that, and I'd be intrigued to see whether others do that. Apparently, it's not gone down very well. You'd imagine it'd be a fairer system, but also you're losing a lot of maybe those louder voices that can't afford season tickets and things like, or can't get season tickets. Yeah, I wouldn't particularly like to see that at Spurs. I can't imagine many people would either. So yeah, what else did he talk about at the forum? There was a funny little thing about James Maddison when he said he just randomly outed James Maddison's car, and he said something like, James needs to learn that he can't come to the training ground in a red car. I've told him, he'll learn. It was like, okay, Levy trying to kind of drop a little bit of a joke bomb there in the middle of the fans forum. I don't know what car he has and whether Maddison will reply to that or not, but to be fair, it was very much just a humorous thing. And I think everyone appreciates how brilliant an impact James Maddison has had at the club. He also said the last few days of the transfer window were stressful, very stressful. I should also point out as well, of course, it wasn't just Daniel Levy there. It was Ange Postecoglou, Sonny was there, and the women's coach Robert Villaham and Beth England there. Captain, striker, lioness, a bit of a legend, Beth England. She spoke so well on the night. Everything I'd seen from her kind of pieces where she answered questions, she spoke so well, not only on the team going forward, but also just everything to do with the club, to be honest. She was very, very good. Very, I don't think, I kind of heard snippets of her talk in the past in interviews. I didn't realise, let's be honest, she should be the captain. You can, as soon as you listen to her, you can understand exactly why she should be the captain. She was, yeah, and also about the LGBTQ plus community. She spoke very well on that, and her obviously experience, as she says, being a very proud gay person and feeling respected and included in the club as well. And yeah, she was excellent. And actually, Robert Villaham as well. You really get a sense that he and Ange Postecoglou have been brought in as quite similar types to really fit this ethos of the club and the attractive football they're going to play. And it feels like after those mistakes, whoever made him make those mistakes, it does look like, Daniel Levy is now finally putting in the blueprint for the club that everyone needs to follow. And that's what you need. You know, you mentioned Dortmund earlier, and we talked about teams like Ajax and even Bayern Munich. There's a certain way they play. It won't be compromised. And I think Spurs have compromised it in recent years, but it feels like they're kind of back to where they need to be, and we're enjoying it, which makes a huge difference. In terms of Postecoglou, I was trying to think of the major things he said. He did say about the new data side of recruitment. It was quite an interesting kind of long thing he went. I won't read it out because it would be a good 5 to 6 minutes of the podcast. But he spoke about the kind of the increased use of data to narrow down, rather than looking at 300 players. Now you can look at 10 to 15 players. And yeah, he was quite good on also saying that he did give Daniel Levy very specific targets of players he wanted. And it was like pretty much, yeah, get them or don't get anyone. And it was, you know, this is what makes me chuckle when you have people going, Levy's made him sign him. And it's a Levy signing, a club signing. Yeah, Postecoglou doesn't do that. Yeah, I mean, well, you can talk about it. What did you make of the stuff that he said, Postecoglou, about the signing element and just how much control he had over it and has over it?
Yeah, I was just going to bring up. I found that very interesting that he took a little bit of responsibility for the transfer window, which is good to see from a manager, kind of taking it away from Fabio Paratici or Daniel Levy's ballpark, essentially, in that he said, I had more targets, but I made it hard for Daniel as I had few targets. I don't want any player, I want the right players. So yeah, it's as we said in the previous pod earlier this week. He's got his idea. He's straight talking. This is what I want. let's go and do it. This is how I'm going to play. Let's go and do it. So he chose a certain amount of targets and said, these are the players that I want. It's something completely different from the Paratici method in terms of like going and having 10 names on a list and going through them and choosing one. Postecoglou's got his ideas. And yeah, he's openly said, I made it difficult for the chairman. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in January and then what happens next summer as well, in terms of how many players are on that list and how many we can get through the door. Because again, he said he wants to play European football, he wants to play Champions League football, but the squad is not big enough for it at the minute. And we would have struggled this year if we were in the Champions League. We're going to need more bodies in definitely next summer. We don't know what's going to happen in January. It's always a difficult market in January, but whether we try and get a couple in January ready for the summer and then do more in the summer, I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what sort of kind of transfer activity comes in the next couple of windows.
Absolutely, because you'll have the new director of football coming in, and Scott Munn, who started today. Finally, no more Scott Munn undercover. Definitely not Scott Munn undercover. Definitely officially Scott Munn, the new chief football officer of Tottenham Hotspur. So he can get cracking with, well, officially get cracking with everything he needs to do. Fabio Paratici, I'm intrigued to see, because obviously he's still involved in a consultancy role. And we saw him at the game the other day. I wonder now, as soon as that director of football comes in, with no disrespect to Fabio Paratici, he has to be gone. He has to, surely. You can't have him kind of, whatever successes you feel he's had or whatever mistakes he's made, like Nuno, you can't kind of have him there just in the background, as it almost becomes disruptive, I think. Of course, if you want to go to him for a bit of advice, by all means, I don't think that's a bad thing. But if he's going to be there as a bit of a constant presence, then I don't think that does anyone any favors. I think you kind of have to start this new era. And I'm intrigued to see what happens, because obviously now Scott Munn's there. Are we going to get Scott Munn talking quite a bit? Are we going to get interviews? I've already kind of asked to get that, and hopefully, we will speak to him at some point, if he's not annoyed that I kept spotting him at every single game that he wasn't really meant to be at. Well, he was a guest, of course, rather than in a working capacity. But yeah, those quotes that you said from Postecoglou, that's the kind of stuff we expected from Jose and Antonio Conte. And it's like, it's coming from Ange Postecoglou. And I hope a lot of people have realized that this guy will not kind of bend over what he wants it to look like. He looks at a player, and the key thing for him is, can I envisage them in my team? Will they fit? He looks at not only the data, he said that's an element of it, but he also looks at the kind of person they are, the character they are, and whether they're going to be amenable to and moldable to what he wants from them. And yeah, it's really, really interesting, actually. As we're at the halfway point in the show, I do need to remind people that the Gold Guest Talk Tottenham podcast is sponsored by NordVPN, and you can use the service in a host of different ways to enhance your internet experience. NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means there's no buffering, there's no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. It's a service, Nord, that I've used for many, many years, long before they came on as podcast sponsors. So I always feel quite well placed to speak about them and push the merits of what they do to others. Because there's been many times when I've been abroad, when I've been able to set my devices to think they're back in the UK. So I've been able to watch everything I normally would at home, and don't have to worry about those silly restrictions that sometimes European countries and other countries in the world make you or stop you from being able to watch the shows that you've paid to watch. And also security-wise, it goes a long way to stopping those nasty types taking stuff off of your devices when you hook up to a public Wi-Fi. It really is an invaluable service. And not only that, but the outlay on the NordVPN subscription is cheaper for you in the long run. That's because you can purchase streaming services or bookings from other countries at a much cheaper rate. So, for example, you could book flights from another country, which could mean they end up being cheaper than had you booked them as if you were in the UK. So that means you're paying out for Nord, but you're saving money overall. There's a whole host of other benefits from signing up to NordVPN, so why not give it a go? You can grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/goldguest to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 additional months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Another nice thing that Postecoglou did, another nice thing, like he was doing loads of nice things at the fans forum, but he did speak very well.
Wasn't doing any nice things.
Yeah, it was doing horrible. The rest were. He obviously has the crowd eating out the palm of his hand. He speaks so well. They were loving it, and he's got a little bit of a banter that he likes to chuck in there. But for me, there was just this lovely moment when it was all finishing off, and he kind of very quickly went, "No, this young man's got a question down the front." And it was a really lovely moment where a young chap called Owen had been patiently waiting to ask his question, and they kind of Postecoglou like flexed his muscles and essentially said, "No, I'm listening to his question." And it was a nice question about kind of what he expects from the season. And then certainly, I know young Owen's mum, Dee, who's the chair of Spurs Ability, was very, very proud of that moment and delighted for him, because I think he'd been very much excitedly waiting for this forum and meeting Sonny in particular. So yeah, that was a really classy touch from Postecoglou, and yeah, it's the only thing exactly the kind of thing that's only going to endear him to the Spurs fans even more. And actually, I didn't even mention Sonny. Sonny's had a couple of nice little bits and pieces. I thought he spoke very well. He also was quite funny and quite. I mean, we know he's a funny guy, but actually, and quite self-deprecating as well. He like took the mickey out of himself, like looking back at that when he was made captain and speech. It's like, why did I just keep clapping kind of thing throughout? And we did wonder that at the time, whether that was just some kind of thing that he'd always done. And it seems like he just decided in the moment he was going to mark each sentence with a clap. And yeah, he was like, I don't know why I did that. And then there was a nice little moment that we didn't realize before, how do you remember the huddle at the Brentford game away? And we'd just been told, he'd text Romero and Maddison about it, and they were like, oh yeah, but we didn't actually realize he said Romero never replied. So he's still waiting for his reply. And then when they went and did it, he said Romero just looked really confused. He's really wondering, why are we doing this? I wonder if he's got his old number or something.
Maybe.
Yeah, but no, Sonny spoke very well. And I mean, what have you made of his impact as captain? It feels like he's just really grown into it. I know he's South Korea captain, but being a day-to-day captain is a whole different ballgame.
It goes under the radar, doesn't it? He's said himself he's not going to shout and scream and kind of lead like that. He's going to lead by example, and he's a global superstar, isn't he? Really, Sonny.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just leads by that example. He's always got a smile on his face. He's always seems to be happy to be doing whatever. He knows he's going to get. I think it's almost every game so far this season he's been wheeled out to do interviews post-match because he's the Tottenham captain. That was what it was like with Harry Kane. Harry Kane always used to be the one to stop. If the team had lost, he would be the one that would stop because he's the captain. Well, not because he's the captain. Hugo Lloris was the captain, obviously. But
Hugo was good at fronting up, to be fair, especially after really bad defeats.
Yeah, but he's taken that on. He knows what goes with it, and he's just kind of very easily just slotted into that role. You get the feeling that he was quite close with Harry Kane anyway, on and off the pitch, and he's probably learnt a lot from the example that Harry showed when he was at Tottenham, and that's probably doing him a disservice. I don't think he needs to learn from Harry Kane at all. As you said, he's captain of his country. He knows what his role is. He knows how important he is to his country. And if you can be the main man for your country, you can certainly be the main man and kind of lead by example for a club like Tottenham as well, can't you?
Absolutely. No, it was a good event. I think it was. I know some people are never going to be entirely satisfied, and they were, saying, it was easy questions, things like that. I didn't actually think that. I thought some of the questions were quite, like I said, especially about the ticket pricing and things like that, and the Super League. I thought they were actually quite questions that would certainly provoke a response that easy questions wouldn't have. Whether they sidestep them or not, or allowed to sidestep them, that's a whole different thing. But it is just a club event, I guess. But I don't know. I thought it was a useful exercise, and to be honest, it needs to be annual. It needs to go back to being a yearly thing. Even they said in it was 6 years since the last fans forum, which is ridiculous. Let's be honest. And look, I do always get people telling me, chairman don't speak that regularly. We shouldn't expect Levy to always be speaking regularly. But my goodness, an annual thing would be so important, I think, for the connection between him and the fans. And he might not care about that, But if it does, surely from his point of view, if it does stop you getting protests at points of the season, or if it just helps people understand why you're doing stuff, I honestly think it was such a good event for that idea. And it may well be that Scott Munn's heavily involved in future ones, or maybe even Scott Munn does them and not Daniel Levy. Maybe that's the way, because this is what Scott Munn is supposed to be, the new chief football officer, but he is supposed to be Daniel Levy's number two, if you'll pardon the expression. You know, he's going to be the man that is going to take on all decisions when it comes to the football side of the club. So, yeah, maybe it'll be Scott Munn. Maybe we'll get a bit of two Aussies on the panel in the future. We do have to speak as well about the new Daniel Levy stuff that's come out today. Very rare interview he's done with Bloomberg. You often find that when he does do interviews, it's often business outlets, which is obviously a little bit frustrating for us that spend every single day reporting on the football club, and then he heads off to a financial based type to have a chat. But no, I mean, the main things that came out of that were certainly he was asked about his future and selling a stake in the club, to which he said, and this is going to upset some people, I've got no real interest to leave Tottenham, but I have a duty to consider anything that anyone may want to propose. It's not about me, it's what's right for the club. We run this club as if it's a public company. If anyone wants to make a serious proposition to the board of Tottenham, we would consider it along with our advisors. And if we felt it was the interest of the clubs, we would be open to anything. But yeah, certainly that really ties in with the idea that we've been told in the past that if someone were to, let's say, take a controlling stake in Spurs, there would be a big chance that Daniel Levy would want to stick around still as like a CEO type. And it's a really interesting one, this. I'm going to ask you this question, just to further put yourself into the Daniel Levy opinion category. If let's say, and we must stress, because Spurs are very keen to stress this, that he was only talking about a stake in the club. There's been no talks about, buying the entire club or a controlling interest in the club. And Levy did admit in this interview that they had offers from the Middle East, Far East, and the US, but nothing has been put on our table that we felt has been in the interest of the shareholders. I think that's to do with investment as well, rather than buying out or taking over the club. If, let's talk very hypothetically, someone took over the club with vast reserves of money to pump into it, would you want Daniel Levy to remain as the CEO to oversee that?
Wow, what a question that is.
I know.
Considering people listening to this podcast are only going to think I'm on it because we're talking about Daniel Levy. That's 2 podcasts in a row now. It's
Daniel Levy.
Daniel Levy. Yep. Look, I think as long as the club remains stable, I think that's what everyone will be looking to. And if someone were to come in and, as you say, pump millions, billions into the club so that we could grow and grow and grow and start challenging the likes of Manchester City on a regular basis, while making sure that the club is still stable and not in danger of going down the pan, as it were, then it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. If the kind of stipulation is that Daniel Levy has to, what did you ask me? Whether I would want him to stay or want him to leave?
Whether you would be happy for him to remain as CEO under a new ownership?
I think I probably would be. I think I probably would be happy to see him remain. The way he's kind of conducted the business side of things at Spurs since he's been the chairman has generally been pretty good. The kind of the flaws and the mistakes have come on the football side of things. So if you were to give him that business role, CEO role, and have someone more on a football basis, absolutely, why not? He clearly knows how to run the club as a business. That's what every fan's issue is with him, that he runs the club as a business. So if he can deal with that money in the right way on the kind of behind the scenes side, and there is someone else who's in charge of the kind of football side, then absolutely, I wouldn't have an issue with him staying on as CEO.
Yeah, I think there's 2 sides to it. I don't think it would be the same as people kind of think it is now. I think Daniel Levy is a CEO with a lot of financial might behind him, or a lot more than there is, and the ability Because I do think that has always been his sole thing, is about protecting the club for the future. That's certainly what he kind of says is always his sole aim, that he's the custodian of the football club. So yeah, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world to have someone who actually kind of has that sense of running a club well, because we have seen some clubs when suddenly there's a lot of money come in, they absolutely go mad with it and do it the wrong way.
I was just going to say, how many examples are there of billionaires coming into clubs and just spending money wherever they want, and it not having a kind of clear path, clear direction, and it not going to plan. It happens so often.
And it can stuff you for the future as well. So yeah, from that point of view, I can understand it. There's also a part of me that kind of thinks whether you just need a fresh start if there's new owners come in. But who knows? They may come in and see him as an important part of taking over a club. I don't know. Obviously, you do have the other factors, like literally I've just seen as we're doing this, someone's replied, "You need to step down, Levy," in like one of the replies to the earlier Bloomberg piece that I put out. And again, I go back to what we said in the last show, that Levy and his family own just under 30% of Enix, controlling 86.58% of the club. It's not a case of him just standing down. He would have to sell his shares. He would have to sell his stake in the club. It's all very well saying, "Oh yeah, but he could stop being chairman." Yeah, of course he could, but he would still own a big old chunk and have a big say on what happens at the club. So it doesn't really work like that. So yeah, we'll see. But it definitely has been a real focus on any interest in investment coming in only being in a stake of the club. That's been a real thing coming out of Spurs, not takeovers. Maybe that's just because the takeover cost would be huge. I don't know, because you're not only taking on the team, the club, whatever. Obviously, you don't have Harry Kane as your kind of crown jewel, but Postecoglou is obviously turning it into something different and potentially maybe more attractive in the long term. We hope. But also, you're taking on that amazing stadium. You are also taking on the debt as well for the next, whatever it is, 25 years or so it's tied up in. I can't remember what it is now. But you're also taking on, I guess, a lot of what Spurs are involved in the regeneration around the stadium as well. And I don't know entirely how that works. Are you just buying a club? Are you also buying, I hate to use this word because it's what they use, property development? Are you taking on everything that comes with it? So maybe it's not just a case of a club comes in and whacks, I don't know, 3 billion on the table for Tottenham Hotspur. You're actually also paying for everything that now comes with it, because let's be honest, whoever has control of that regeneration or the housing or the shopping centre stuff that's coming, the hotel, Extreme Sports Centre, cinema. Honestly, there's so much that's coming. It's going to kind of resemble Stratford, a lot of it, by the looks of the plans and things, or certainly around Stratford. Whoever comes in is going to make a lot of money out of that aspect of it as well. At the moment, we're told that everything to do with the club goes straight back into the club. It'd be interesting to know, does all the property holding included in that as well? I think that's something that, whether the club will fully discuss or divulge, I don't know. That's probably one for a whole other podcast. But I'd be intrigued to know, because obviously the thing is, it's so much. It's carved up, isn't it, into different kind of companies, holding companies, and things like that, and how many of those go straight. We certainly are constantly told that all the revenue from NFL, this Formula One stuff that's coming, concerts, events, everything to do with the stadium certainly goes back into the club and the first team and all elements of the football side of the club. But whether, does the property development side of it as well, I don't know. It'd be quite interesting to know the answer to that. I was trying to think what else he said in that Bloomberg interview. He reiterated the Harry Kane buyback clause. He also said that Postecoglou has made a very, very big impact. That's not exactly breaking news. We know that. We can see that. And it's been rather glorious thus far. And yeah, he just spoke about the stadium naming rights again. Very much made it sound like it's not so much a priority anymore. There's this real shift towards, we've realised that having Tottenham Hotspurs on the stadium's name has actually brought us in unexpected benefits and an exposure to the club around the world, and probably has a knock-on effect in other sponsorship deals and everything that maybe comes to more than they would have got for the actual stadium naming rights deal. I don't know, but certainly he seems to say that there's no mad rush to do that. If it's something that happens, it happens. And then he spoke about Postecoglou fitting the ethos of the club, and we're not a club that can buy success. That's the reality, and we have to understand that. We needed a manager who was completely aligned with our philosophy. I don't know if fans are going to like that. I think we know where he's coming from. I think they can certainly wield their financial might a little bit more than they sometimes do. But again, as you said in the last pod, it's about picking the right players, not necessarily splashing out on every and any player. What have you just made overall of Daniel Levy's comments this month? Has it been
another Daniel Levy question? Thanks for that.
Well, as you're here as our Daniel Levy expert and correspondent, I mean, do you feel it's been a positive overall, at least to have heard from him?
It's just been too long coming, hasn't it? You've said it before. We don't, and you've said also that a lot of football clubs fans will tell you, "Oh, chairman, don't speak out," and they don't. They don't do it nearly enough. They're the ones that are responsible for the club. They're the clubs. They are the custodians of the club, and we don't hear nearly enough from Daniel Levy. Other clubs don't hear nearly enough from their chairman. 6 years for one fans forum to a next is just not good enough. We need answers. The fans want answers to questions, and it doesn't have to be that he has to come out every couple of weeks or every month and answer
on the pod.
Not Monday. I'd love to have him on the pod. That'd be brilliant. If you're listening, Daniel, come on.
Just for you and him, the whole pod.
Yeah. They don't have to come and answer every single mundane bit of information, but every 6 months, every year, it would just be nice to hear from the chairman and what's going on behind the scenes and reasons for decisions that have been made. That's all fans want, isn't it? They want. We protest so many different things because we don't feel like we have proper answers to major talking points in our lives and in the club's life. If people were to come out more and speak out more, I'm sure a lot of that would die down. Maybe not die down, but would kind of lessen, and it would just kind of ease people's minds. I think they just want to hear. They just want to hear the answers to questions, and decisions that have been made. That's all it comes down to, really. We may not agree with them, but at least we've got an answer. At least we've got a reason for why it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, yeah. I mean, I'm not suggesting that maybe you should do a podcast called COYS Daniel or something that just once a week. But certainly, yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I really don't, and I will shout that to the rooftops. That especially at a club like Spurs that have just been, let's be honest, they have been a soap opera, despite them not liking me saying that. They have been a lot of. Well, there has been a lot of crazy things that have happened over recent years, and just more weird stuff seems to happen at Spurs that doesn't happen at other clubs. And I think, it's not all intentional. There are some kind of what's the word? Kind of they bring it on themselves sometimes. And yeah, I just think even this annual thing, you get the chairman's statement each year that goes out with the program and the final home game of the season, and we get the financial statement thing. But they're just words, and let's be honest, I would be stunned if Daniel Levy is sitting down going, "What shall I write this year?" I'm sure that it's very much a group effort. Whereas when you actually get him talking, that's it. That's him talking. That's him explaining. That's him very much, speaking his mind, and not kind of anyone else that's guiding him on what he should say. I'm sure he's got a bit of briefing, like don't say this, don't say that. But ultimately, he's a guy that I can imagine has quite a clear kind of view on what he needs to say and what he has to say, and kind of attitudes and narratives and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, definitely a good thing for me. Moving away from the world of COYS, Daniel. The under-21s match at Colchester. While all this, the fans forum was going, because media weren't allowed in, I was sat there in Colchester, just not too far up the road from me, watching the next generation of Spurs players playing. And do you know what? They were fabulous. They were so good. I'm so happy for Wayne Burnett, the under-21s coach, because last season there was so many factors towards his team struggling. First half of the season, second half of the season, they barely lost a game. But the first half of the season, they had injury issues. He had Conte just nabbing his players at any point to stand as pretty much cones in first team training sessions. And now he's got a fully fit squad with a lot of talent in it, and they are smashing everyone. They're top of the 26th team Premier League 2 table. They scored, I think, something like 15 goals, conceded 1. And then on Tuesday night, they had the EFL Trophy where they were taking on senior players at Colchester United. You've got to, clarify that, yes, Colchester United made 12 changes from the team that played at the weekend in League 2. However, this was not a kids team. It was a younger age team, but these were first team players, certainly. And Spurs walloped them 5-0. They were brilliant. They played them off the park for long periods. They were playing the kind of football that Postecoglou's bringing to the first team. And to
Can
be
I
fair
ask you
to
a question
Spurs,
on that?
of course you can. Go for it.
You've just mentioned it there. Is this as a result of Postecoglou's impact this early on, and the fact that he wants the dynamism between the two teams, and he wants to see the players grow into what he wants from the first team, or is it too early to say that?
No, is the answer to your question. It's actually not Postecoglou related. And that's a good thing in a weird way, because it was always the overriding philosophy of the academy. The under-21s, under-18s, everything below, they play with a 4-3-3. They play fast, high-paced, aggressive football. They press high up the pitch. They even have one of their fullbacks comes inside a lot of the time and fills into midfield. It's just part of the way that the academy's always played. If you want to analyze that and say, where's the weirdness of that? They were still playing like that when Mourinho and Conte were the managers. Now, that's definitely where there's a big issue, in that you've got an ethos of the club, you've got an academy playing in a certain style of way, and yet the first team managers were playing utterly different football. So how in the world were those academy players ever going to suddenly step up into the first team? Whereas if anything, they've gone out and got they've got the Postecoglou who's come in, and lo and behold, these academy players will suddenly be thinking, hello, that's exactly the way we've been playing in the academy. And they are going to just form a production line now for him. And it's so much better. And obviously, I think for Postecoglou, from what I understand, he hasn't had a lot of time yet to really focus on the academy. Essentially, he's got such a big job on his hands coming in, but he has made himself available to the academy coaches, and they've all kind of spoken to him, and he's brought players from the academy into training sessions to actually move around and kick the ball and get involved, which must be very exciting for those who just went and stood there as a static 11 for Conte's 11 to practice around. And yeah, it was really interesting to watch them the other day and watch the amount of players. Whereas I would sometimes go to games before and I would kind of feel like, yeah, you can see where maybe he's going to go off and have a Football League career and stuff like that. I genuinely watched the game the other day, and there was so many players that could fit very nicely into the Postecoglou way. I mean, Jamie Donnelly was incredible. Jamie Donnelly, I'm about to kind of go against what I've just said, because I do feel like I'd love to see him go out on loan. And that's purely because I think the amount of attacking players that are in that kind of first team right now. But Jamie Donnelly, and this is a lofty comparison, and it's not a direct comparison. It's only saying that there's little traits of him. I'm doing exactly what Pochettino did with Marcus Edwards now, and we all criticise him for. But he's got a similar playing style to Harry Kane, in that he can go up front as a prolific striker. He can score you goals, but actually he's developed in recent years to really be a player that comes deep and pulls the strings. And now he essentially plays as a midfielder. He plays... You can see it as a 4-3-3, or you could see it as a 4-2-3-1, and he's very much at the tip of this midfield axis. That the other night had Lyons Foster and Matthew Craig, Brooklyn Lyons Foster and Matthew Craig as the more defensive players, and he pings the ball about. He spreads the ball around the pitch. He scored 2 goals. He got an assist. He was involved in pretty much all 5 of the goals. He got a new 4-year deal earlier in the year, which shows how highly the club rate him. But actually, he hasn't, I don't think, been involved so much. I know he has a couple of times, but not so much with the first team. And I do think that that's going to change if he keeps this up. He was nominated for Premier League 2 Player of the Month in August. 6 assists and a goal. And he got 2 the other night against Colchester. I wouldn't be shocked if Colchester have gone away thinking, we should probably bring this lad in. I wonder if we can get him in January on a bit of a loan. Just for the rest of the season. But he was excellent. Judson Bell was very good as well. Very, very good. He came from Chelsea. He scored a couple of goals, got an assist as well, I think. Constant dribbling threat. Will Lancashire held the ball up very well up front. Josh Keeley is a very good young goalkeeper. Ashley Phillips was playing alongside Alfie Dorrington. Alfie Dorrington, I think, can feel very unfortunate that Ashley Phillips has come in, because I feel like Alfie Dorrington is a big star of the future, and he may have to head out on loan now because of Ashley Phillips' arrival. And I don't think there's much between them. I think it's just that Ashley Phillips has got that bit of experience, having played, I think it's 8 championship matches. But keep an eye on Alfie Dorrington. But most of all, we got to see Alejo Veliz. We got to see his debut. Apparently, he's called Ale around the club. And I do wonder. Yeah. I think I've called a fair few things around the club. Sorry, LA is not one of them. But yeah, he's Postecoglou made this very clear statement about how he won't be getting minutes in the first half of the season. But he did say that before he'd come into training sessions and before he was fit from his injury. And I do wonder whether he rethinks that at all, because having watched him the other night, he only had it was a kind of allocated 30 minutes. It was 28 minutes of normal time he came on for. He looked rusty in front of goal. There was a couple of one-on-ones that he hit straight at the keeper. But he, for me, physically is ready for Premier League football. He is a big unit. He towered over coaches and the other players. His hold-up play was excellent. His movement was really good. Judson Bell's second goal, it's pretty much made by a terrific Veliz run that draws a defender away and allows this little pocket of space for him to run into. I was impressed by him. It was his 20th birthday as well. 20th birthday in Colchester. What a treat for the young man from Argentina. And then also we forget he scored 11 goals in 23 matches in the Argentinian top flight for Rosario Central last season. He's not just a kid that is purely like there for the academy football. I think they are just using him for that little bit of sharpness and fitness. I've just got this funny feeling that, especially if you see an injury or two, and obviously Perisic now is kind of one that's now obviously not going to be on that bench. I wonder whether Veliz will end up coming in a little bit sooner. You looking to see him a little bit sooner than the second half of the season?
I don't know if I'm looking to see him a bit sooner. I did see some of the highlights from the under-21s game, and you're right. He did kind of, his finishing wasn't up to par as yet, but that will come obviously. But yeah, the one thing I took away was that he did look like a big lad, and yes. if he can kind of get up to speed with English and the kind of the physical nature of the English game, then he'll definitely be kind of a presence that we can use. And I was going to ask you actually about the fact that Perisic is not going to be on the bench now. That kind of opens up a space for someone. Obviously not for this weekend, but he could be one that kind of drops in on the bench as another option, couldn't he? Who do you think is going to be who's going to be the one that takes Perisic's place on the bench this weekend? Do you think?
Oh, you think Lo Celso? I'd imagine he'll be in a. Sorry?
Fit enough to be on the bench?
Well, he said he kind of had been back in training and it just they felt there's no point chucking him in last weekend. So I'd imagine he'll be at a state where he should be able to contribute this weekend. Brian Hill, I don't think is in that place quite yet. Yeah, I think probably Lo Celso, because otherwise it's only Ashley Phillips really, isn't it, that you could kind of bring in as another one unless I'm missing someone really obvious. But that kind of does show you that a couple of injuries, and I think Veliz suddenly emerges as an option on the bench, especially as Devine and Scarlett have headed off on loan. So, so hopefully that's what we do see a little bit of him, because we've seen it with young strikers especially. They only need one chance. And if they get a goal, suddenly, always remember Marcus Rashford kind of coming in because there was injuries on the bench at United, and didn't he scores in the Europa League, I think, or something like that. And suddenly he
scored 2 against Arsenal in the Premier League in his first game, didn't he?
Yeah, I feel like he was. Van Gaal brought him into a Europa League game or something
Yeah,
like
I think
that.
there was.
But yeah, and I mean, hopefully that could happen with Elise as well. But yeah, very quickly, because we've been going on way longer than we expected. North London derby this weekend. What's the team you'd put out?
It's hard, isn't it? Because you look at Arsenal last night and kind of tore apart PSV, who didn't come to sit in. They came to attack and to play. And yeah, PSV aren't the best side in the world, but they were unbeaten in the Eredivisie before last night's game, obviously. And Arsenal went and won 4-0. As much as I hate to say it, Arsenal are a very good team. They're a very strong team, and they ran Man City close last year for reasons that you can see. Obviously, delighted. Obviously, they didn't manage to do it, which was great. But it doesn't seem to me like the Ange Postecoglou way that he's going to set up in any different way than we're going to go out and we're going to play our football. We're going to attack Arsenal and we're going to entertain the fans, which he will do, and try and get the result. Obviously, if it was me, I might be mindful to go a little bit more defensive, but I can't see Ange doing that. And I think it's going to be a hell of a game for anyone of a Spurs, Arsenal, or neutral persuasion to watch on Sunday, because it will be two teams that will absolutely be going hammer and tongs against one another for it, in a feisty derby game that it always is.
Did you bring in Richarlison?
Now that's an interesting one.
Thanks.
I think insightful questions. I think I probably would. I think I like what I've seen of Manor Solomon. He's not been involved in a big derby game yet. Sonny knows what it's like. Richarlison's been involved in big derby games in at Everton, and obviously, did he play? He must have played at some point in the games against Arsenal last season as well. With Manor, one. I just think if you've got that experience, you got that experience of Richarlison playing through the middle. He's got that bit of confidence. You can move Sonny back out onto the left. He's got the big game North London derby experience, and just use Manor Solomon from the bench, potentially Brennan Johnson from bench. That's nothing against Manor Solomon. I think it would just be that kind of that big game, real experience at this level. But then again, you could argue that Manor Solomon is quite young. He's reasonably new to the Premier League. He might just thrive off being thrown into that situation.
Yeah, I think I'm fascinated to see how it goes, purely because I think Spurs have gone there in recent years and set up to defend and hit on the counter, and it hasn't worked. Let's be honest, very little has worked at the Emirates over the years. And I think Postecoglou going there and playing in the way he wants to play, it really is going to be, especially as both clubs have been in the documentary of that name, all or nothing. I feel like it really is going to, either they're going to go there and we're going to have the most glorious podcast next week as we talk about this ridiculously attacking, exciting victory, or they're going to get picked off every time by a very good Arsenal team. And that's why I keep feeling it's just come too early. And I hope I'm wrong, but I feel it might have maybe just the Postecoglou football isn't quite there yet to handle a team like Arsenal at home. I'm hoping that's completely wrong. And I'm hoping that
he said, hasn't he, that he doesn't want to temper fans' expectations. Let them believe,
True.
And it's up to us to live up to those expectations. How amazing would it be to go and beat Arsenal, and then those expectations are out there for everyone. It's like, right, you've done that now. Liverpool next.
Absolutely. I think I'm just naturally pessimistic about the Emirates. I just think every time I've ever been there, it's just been horrendous. I still go back to the Nuno game there. Honestly, it's just horrible. I would put Richarlison in. I think you've got to ride the wave of his kind of the motivation, encouragement, confidence that he'll have got from that game. I do agree. I think Manor Solomon has done a terrific job, but I also think coming off the bench, he could now be the impact player that Perisic was, maybe in a different way. Whereas I think with Richarlison, he's going to fight like mad up front for Spurs.
Yep.
He's going to, the physical element will be very good. And, Sonny can fly down the left as well. Yeah, I think I would stick with the team. even with Porro over Emerson, who's just become a dad, and obviously, hopefully, is back from Brazil. I think I would still go with Porro. I think it's going to be a tough day for him. I think he's going to get tested, but he did well against Man U, against like tricky wingers. He's done well against a few tricky wingers as well. Whereas Emerson, I felt, did struggle on that opening day at Brentford. So why not give him a go? If it all goes wrong, at least they played the Postecoglou way, and that's key.
I spoke to a couple of our Arsenal writers earlier in the week, and I said that the Gabriel Martinelli injury might be key in that. I think if Martinelli was playing, I think there might be an inclination to use Emerson Royale for his more defensive nature. With Martinelli and his pace not there, I think Porro's got a bit more of an ability to get up and down the wing. And yeah, Leandro Trossard's a quality player, of course, but he hasn't got that pace. Porro can obviously get back in position and deal with that kind of winger, whereas he might not have been able to if Martinelli was playing.
It's a great shout. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that could be a key little battle there. I think a lot's going to be asked of Basuma and Maddison to lead the team through the centre of the pitch. I think if Sarr, I presume, will start, he has played against Arsenal before, hasn't he? He's had that experience now. So I think for him, it's another game to kind of show what a talent he can be. And yeah, it's a lot on that very young back line. They're going to come under a lot of pressure. Look, we know there's going to be moments when they're going to be caught in possession. They are. That's naturally the Postecoglou way of trying to play out from the back. It's going to, in the intense atmosphere of the Emirates, with Arsenal pressing them high up the pitch at times, it's going to lead to some mistakes. And we can only kind of hope that it doesn't lead to goals. But I'd hope that they also take something from those last couple of minutes against Sheffield United and the character they can show, that even if they did go an early goal down, maybe that they could bounce back from it. But yeah, I'm already being negative there. No, I'm going to think positive, and hopefully it's going to be a good day at the Emirates for a change. Right, I think we'll have to wrap it up there. With this was going to be a shorter pod, and it's barely been a shorter pod because again, Spurs gave us so much to talk about. So yes, thanks once again, Mr. Wilmot, for stepping in for the travelling guestie. And
no problem at all. I will just make one prediction for Sunday. Brendan Johnson's going to have an impact in some way on Sunday, I think, off the bench. There's my prediction for Sunday.
I hope so. I hope it's with a goal that actually stands this time. That would be fantastic. Yes. Right, well, we're going to head off. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham. And hopefully when we return next week, we'll have some positive stuff to discuss. To grab a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/goldguest and you can receive an extra 4 months for free, and there's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the episode description box.